When animating objects, applying squash and stretch can imbue life and personality into an ordinary action. Here's an easy way to do it in Blender 2.8. First, set the Render Properties Render Engine to Eevee and Viewport Shading to Material Preview Mode. Create a UV sphere, then raise it up 1 in Z and name it Ball. Open the shading layout from the top menu and create a new material. Add a checker texture node from the Add Texture menu. Connect the color output to the shader base color, then change color 2 to something livelier than gray. Add an input texture coordinate node and connect the UV output to the checker texture vector. In top view, notice the uneven checker pattern. Change the texture scale to an even integer value for an evenly distributed pattern. Higher values create a smaller pattern. 6 or 8 is a good size. Right-click in the 3D viewport and smooth shade the ball. Then lower the roughness in the shader to make it more shiny and reflective. Back in the 3D layout, add an armature object and name it Ball Control. In the Bone's Object Properties, open Viewport Display and check On In Front to make the bone control more visible. Tab into Edit mode and change its length to 2, or the diameter of the ball. Back in Object mode, select the ball, then Shift-select the bone and press Ctrl-P, Set Parent to Armature Deform with Automatic Weights. Select the bone only, and in the Object Constraint Properties, add a Maintain Volume constraint. Set the mode to Strict and Free Axis to Z. Use the ball control bone to move the ball in space, and the bone scale Z to squash and stretch the ball. Select the ball to change its rotation. The squash and stretch works in any ball orientation. Now we can animate the ball to give it some life. In the Output Properties, set the frame rate to 30 frames per second and set the end frame to 31. Starting at frame 1, right-click on the Bone Scale Z property to set a single keyframe on that channel only. This will restrict the keyframed channels to only those we are using and reduce clutter in the channel outliner. Insert a keyframe also on Location Z. Move the timeline to the end frame 31 and set keyframes on the same channels. Now move the timeline to frame 5 and scale Z down to squash the ball as it prepares to launch itself into the air. Set a keyframe there. Move the timeline to frame 13, stretch the ball, and set a keyframe. Then move the timeline to frame 20, scale the ball back to 1, and set a keyframe. Scrub the timeline to when the ball starts to rebound and reaches a normal scale, at about frame 9, and set a keyframe on Location Z. This is the start of the ball's launch into the air. Move the timeline to frame 20, then raise the ball in Location Z to the top of the bounce, about 7 meters, and set a keyframe there. Press the spacebar to play the animation. We have a general sense of the movement, but it looks sluggish, so we need to adjust the keyframe properties. With the mouse over the timeline, press Ctrl-Tab to display the graph editor. Click on the triangle at the top left of the timeline to display the channel outliner. Select the Z location curve and notice the smooth transitions in and out of the bottom keyframes. We need to sharpen those to create faster accelerations. Select the keyframes at frame 9 and 31, then press V to display the Keyframe Handle Type menu, and select Free to break the handles so they can move independently. To select only the inside handles, press the C key, then while pressing Shift, deselect the outside handles and keyframes. Then press Escape. Press G, Y, and raise the handles to form a smooth parabolic arch. On the Z scale curve, we should sharpen the beginning and end keyframes also. Now when we play the animation, the motion looks snappier and more natural. Next we'll add some spin to the ball. Starting at frame 1, select the ball and set a keyframe on its Y rotation. Then go to frame 9, just before the ball begins to leave the ground, and set a keyframe there. Then at frame 31, rotate the ball 360 degrees and set a keyframe there. Press T in the graph editor and set the interpolation mode to linear. Instead of looping the short frame range, we can repeat the animation for as long as we want by adding a cycle modifier. Press the N key to open the graph editor properties and select the Modifiers tab. Then add a cycles modifier. Set before repeat motion to No Cycles to eliminate the cycles from the start of the animation. Select the Bone Z location channel, then add a cycles modifier. Select the Bone Z scale and do the same for it. Now extend the playback range to the end of any cycle for the number of repetitions you want to render, such as frame 91 for 3 bounces. Last, we'll add some forward motion to the ball so it can travel after each bounce. Return to frame 1 and select the bone control. Set a keyframe on location X. Go to frame 9 and set a keyframe at the same location X position. Go to frame 31, move the bone some distance in X, and set a keyframe there. Now display only the X location curve. Press A to select all keyframes, and T to select linear interpolation. Add a cycle modifier, but this time change after to repeat with offset. Hide the bone control and play the animation to view the results.